So we pledge in the honor of our great African American community to build a future where every American child can live in safety, dignity, liberty, and peace. As Americans, we all share the same dreams, the same hopes, and the same magnificent destiny. We are now and will forever be one people, one family, and one glorious nation under God.
We are all just one big happy family, folks. Of course, we know that's a fairy tale, right? The truth is, America wants to erase the horrors of slavery, and this is why they're trying so hard to rewrite the past so that they can control the future. They know full well that we are in the end game and they need to protect their deceptive narratives about history. This article from Truth Out says Trump appears bent on ridding schools of dangerous practices like critical thinking and an unsanitized study of history. Unsanitized? What they mean is that they need to whitewash it so that it will not cause white guilt. The author says the act of forgetting is not passive. It actively supports systems of oppression and censorship, muffling dissent and debate, both of which are essential for a healthy democracy. So the slave trading nations are now trying to erase what their oppressive behavior was like and how it affected our people. And this is why we need to uncover the truth about what happened. But we can't just expose the truth about what happened. We also have to understand the strategies they're using. They want us to assimilate. The elites want a blended society, but they will always remain on top. Yes, we're talking about things like the continued gaslighting, mind control, and generational breeding. But there are other ways that we need to pay attention to. But the end game is assimilation. Assimilation means that we are all just one big happy family. We're all Americans here. Leave the past in the past. There's no need to right our wrongs or pay the debt that we owe. In essence, they are playing you. So we're going to look at one of the main ways they've been doing that through this two-party political system. And just a note here, if you've been listening to the videos for a while, you know that I am not for either party. I've said repeatedly that the Democrats and Republicans are two wings on the same bird. And we're going to see just how true that is. They want us to believe that they are two opposing parties, but they're not. Let's look at this article entitled, How the Founding Fathers Protected Their Own Wealth and Power. It says extremely wealthy landowners, merchants, and slave owners held political power both long before and long after independence from Britain. Many of the Founding Fathers battled to keep religious power out of government, but they saw not the need for separation of state and business interests. Most of these wealthy men opposed democracy and designed the Constitution to ensure the aristocracy would continue to rule society. What were they trying to do? Protect their own wealth. So this system they put in place is designed to do just that. It goes on to say the Continental Congress, which governed the colonies throughout the war, was dominated by rich men, linked together in faction and compacts by business and family connections. So we're looking at bloodline here. And that the Constitution illustrates the complexity of the American system, that it serves the interests of a wealthy elite. Let's say that again. The Constitution serves the interests of a wealthy elite, but also does enough for small property owners, for middle income mechanics and farmers to build a broad base of support. The slightly prosperous people who make up this base of support are buffers. They are buffers against the blacks, the Indians, and the very poor whites. They enable the elite to keep control with a minimum of coercion, a maximum of law, all made palatable by the fanfare of patriotism and unity. So how do they keep our people under control? It's based on skin color, white privilege. They are the ones using the race card. The elite put a system in place to help them maintain control using the guise of patriotism and unity. The glue holding it all together is white supremacy. So white Americans are told that minorities are trying to take something from them. They can't see that they're being played because they are blinded by this supremacist ideology, pride, and arrogance. They honestly believe that their skin color makes them better. But they are pawns. They don't have any real power. They're being used by the elites, and when they realize it, it will be too late because Nazism, white supremacy, is going to come crashing down. What we see happening today is the continuation of what happened after Bacon's rebellion. The elites put a system in place to control the majority, and now it's being managed by the Democratic and Republican Party. Listen to this quote from Nathaniel Bacon. He said, "The poverty of the country is such that all the power and sway is got into the hands of the rich, who by extortious advantages, having the common people in their debt, have always curbed and oppressed them in all manner of ways. The rich also structure their new government in a very specific way." What are we talking about? The Constitution. Most of them believed the wealthy, the well-born, deserved decision-making power, not the common man. As I said earlier, they use various methods, but this two-party system is often not talked about. Now let's make it plain for you. This is what John Jay said. He served as the first Chief Justice of the United States, and he helped to write the Constitution. He said the people who own the country ought to govern it. Did you catch that? The people who own the country? Did you know that there are people who believe that they own the country? These are their so-called founding fathers saying this. Now, James Madison argued that senators should come from and represent the wealth of the nation. He also sneered at politicians who supported giving all men perfect equality in their political rights. So do you see that they never intended for all men to have equality? The article goes on to say these men wrote of the need to protect the minority against the tyranny of the majority, but saw no threat in a minority of wealthy men withholding political and economic power from the majority. So let's pause there. Because when they say protect the minority, they're not talking about the blacks, the Native Americans, and the poor whites. They're talking about the elite. They see themselves as the minority, so they set up a system to protect themselves from the majority. This is why certain groups maintain wealth and power. It goes on to say, though the Constitution and Bill of Rights granted unprecedented individual rights, the common citizen had little political power. Popular vote had almost no place in the government they designed. That's why Hillary didn't win the presidency. It's not based on popular vote. It says the popular vote did not appoint judges. It still does not. Nor the president. It still does not. As the Electoral College has yet to be dismantled. This was one of the systems they put in place to make sure that they would be able to determine who would be president. It says, nor senators until 1913. Madison himself said that the Senate therefore ought to be this body that protects the minority of the opulent against the majority. Do you see the role of the Senate? They are there to protect the elite. It says the people only directly elected members of the House, yet only property owners were allowed to vote, further disenfranchising the poor and keeping the power in the hands of the better off. Only in 1856 did the last state, North Carolina, do away with property requirements to vote. Let's look at the political groups initially. Let's look at the Federalists. Well, who were they? The Federalists were generally made up of big property owners, conservative small farmers and businessmen, wealthy merchants, clergymen, judges, lawyers, and professionals. They favored weaker state governments, the indirect election of government officials, longer term limits for office holders and representatives, rather than direct democracy. The Federalists were nationalists who wanted a physically and militarily strong nation state and showed little interest in states' rights. Today you hear Republicans calling themselves nationalists, and you'll find out why shortly, but let's go on. The next group was called the Democratic Republican Party. So this comes from ThoughtCo. It says the Democratic Republican Party. The Democratic Republican Party. Yes, there was a party calling themselves the Democratic Republicans. It says the Democratic Republican Party is the earliest political party in the United States, dating to 1792. The Democratic Republican Party was founded by James Madison and Thomas Jefferson, the author of the Declaration of Independence and champion of the Bill of Rights. It eventually ceased to exist by that name following the 1824 presidential election and became known as the Democratic Party, though it shares little in common with the modern political organization with the same name. The American History Central says the Democratic Republican was the second political party established in the United States following the Federalist Party. Democratic Republicans supported states' rights, a strict interpretation of the Constitution, and opposition to a strong central government, aristocracy, and elitism. The party was founded in opposition to the Federalist Party and was led by Thomas Jefferson. The party's foreign policy preferred an alliance with France and was cautious toward any dealings with Great Britain. Following the 1824 presidential election, the Democratic Republican Party split into two factions, which eventually led to the formation of the Democratic Party and the Whig Party. So you had the Federalists and the Democratic Republicans. Let's look at what each party believed. The Federalists, they were committed to a physically sound and nationalistic government. They favored a national ban, tariffs, and good relations with Britain. They supported implied powers, those powers that were authorized by a legal document, namely the Constitution, which, while not stated, seemed to be implied by powers expressly stated. They held conservative views, and they were composed of the elite class. Versus the Jeffersonian Republicans, they were committed to the rights of states, the primacy of farmers, yeomen, and the principles of republicanism, as in liberty and inalienable rights. They opposed the Jay Treaty. They wanted good relations with France, not Britain. They opposed the ideas of a national bank or implied powers. They were predominantly anti-administration. So the party of the so-called elites didn't last. Do you think they just gave up so that the common people could rule? Absolutely not. No, the Jeffersonian Republicans was the foundation for the modern Republican and Democratic parties. Now it says, although the current forms of both are different from the early sect, I want you to think about this. Who do you think is running things behind the scenes? Now this is key, because both parties were birthed out of the Democratic Republican Party, later called the Jeffersonian Republican Party. Again, two wings, same bird. But they have not always had the same ideals that they have today. Listen, it says, in fact, America's two dominant political parties have essentially flipped ideologies in the time since they were founded. The Democratic Party was founded in 1828, while the Republican Party dates back to 1854. In its early years, the Republican Party was considered quite liberal, while the Democrats were known for staunch conservatism. This is the exact opposite of how each party would be described today. This change did not happen overnight, however. Instead, it was a slow set of changes and policies that caused the great switch. And the control of the elites never ended. The two-party system is carrying out the wishes of the elites, or should I say, those who say they own the country. We're going to look at this from the Seattle Times. It's talking about proof that Democrats and Republicans can work together. It says a recent study published in the New York Times found that approximately 42% of both Republicans and Democrats viewed members of the opposing party as evil. The same study found that 20% from each party said the opposition lacked the traits to be considered fully human. Another study from the Southern Poverty Law Center found that younger Republicans and Democrats voiced between 32% and 44% approval for eliminating a politician who is harming the country or democracy. It says if these statistics don't raise concerns about the America we're raising our children in, what will? So this is the perception that they hate each other. But what's behind the scenes? Let's see if this is just a show. When you look at this image, do you see enemies? What about this image? They seem very committed to their roles, but enemies? If so, there's a whole lot of pretending going on here. Now, what about these two? Do you see enemies? If you didn't know who they were and you witnessed this scene, would you say that they wished for the demise of the other as stated in the survey? Come on, Republicans and Democrats who are tearing each other apart, what do you see? So when you have Democrats who are now saying, we told you Kamala would have been the best candidate, are you sure? Can you not see that the same hand is behind both candidates, both parties? But they want us to go at each other because it serves as a distraction. You won't pay attention to what's happening behind the scenes, particularly so-called African Americans. Are the Democrats really for you? Are they really fighting for you? Let's remember that Biden was in office when the immigrants were moved into the black neighborhoods and given resources and opportunities that tax-paying citizens could not get. He was in office when affirmative action was struck down. Now let's take it a step further. Trump is systematically trying to erase what little history we have on record. And you all know this senior senator. He recently gave a 25-hour rebuke of the Trump administration. Would you say that he was representing our issues, the issues that impact us directly? No. But he will be remembered for giving a very long speech. Let's talk about senators for a minute. I read the quote earlier from James Madison saying that senators should come from and represent the wealth of the nation. Now, this article from Tucson.com says people of color have historically had a tougher time getting elected to the Senate. I wonder why. Now, these folks may start out with good intentions, but at the end of the day, they are there to protect the status quo.
New Jersey Democratic Senator Cory Booker broke the record for the longest Senate speech in history. Booker stood on the floor for 25 hours and 5 minutes, where he focused on contesting President Trump's agenda. Let's listen to somewhat of what he had to say during his historic filibuster.
I rise with the intention of disrupting the normal business of the United States Senate for as long as I am physically able. People are saying this country once made itself the envy of the world because we invested in high-quality education for every child. I don't like what's going on with the end of the Department of Education. People are saying I worked harder than I ever have, but the prices on everything in my life are getting higher. People who are saying that the America I learned about in school, the one where people's rights are protected, the people are saying that why are we yet again going through another healthcare battle that threatens millions of people? The people are saying that I'm worried about the financial security and the future of my country.
Democrats, of course, celebrated his accomplishment. Here is Senator Chuck Schumer applauding Booker.
Would the senator yield for a question?
Chuck Schumer, it's the only time in my life I can tell you no.
I just want to tell you a question. Do you know you have just broken the record? Do you know how proud this caucus is of you? Do you know how proud America is of you?
Booker also discussed the economy.
He promised to lower your grocery prices, they're higher. He promised, I'll be a better steward of the economy. It's worse than we inherited. Over and over, he's breaking promises and doing outrageous things, like disappearing people off of American streets, violating fundamental principles of this document, invoking the Alien Enemies Act from the 1700s that was last used to put Japanese Americans in internment camps. Do we see what's happening? How much is enough?
And lastly, here is more of Booker on President Trump and Elon Musk.
We have a president who's come in, and one of the first things he's done in 71 days is insinuate fear and insecurity about Social Security by threatening it, by telling lies about it, and by having somebody like Elon Musk calling it a Ponzi scheme. And that's why we get fear. And then they take a hatchet to the actual agency that undermines its ability to deliver service in a good way.
So what did he focus on? The same Democratic talking points, but was he really focusing on our issues? Now listen to see what he did right after his very long speech. This says, shortly afterwards, Booker invited a comment from Senator Jackie Rosen, who is Jewish and represents Nevada, where his mother lives. Booker praised Rosen as having one of the hardest jobs in all of the United States, which is to be president of a shul, before listening to her comment. After hearing from her, he added a yellow ribbon pin symbolizing the plight of Israeli hostages in Gaza to his lapel. And this is what he said: "I'm grateful that we were founders of the Black Jewish Caucus. The Juneteenth Cedars coming up," Booker told Rosen, referring to a group that formed in 2021. "I'm going to put this on as you have it on, as I think about Eden Alexander and all those who are suffering. I'm just so grateful for our friendship and what we've done against anti-Semitism, what we've done for the Abraham Accords." Now, some of you may know this guy on the right. He calls himself a spiritual advisor. He's supposed to be a rabbi. His name is Shmuley. If you Google the names of these two, you'll find a lot of videos highlighting how close the two of them were. He was also the spiritual advisor to Michael Jackson. This Washington Post article says Cory Booker and the Orthodox rabbi were like brothers. Now they don't speak. The article talks about what happened when Booker attended a Purim festival in 1993. It says Booker was laughing and dancing while carrying the Orthodox rabbi on his back. It goes on to say that this rabbi was a close friend and spiritual mentor during what Booker describes as a profoundly shaping period of his life. But apparently the two had a falling out, and Shmuley accused Booker of trying to erase his Jewish connections. Listen to what he said. He said it happened in September of 2015 when Booker announced his support for the Iran deal, which Botek said was an unforgivable betrayal of Israel. He also said Booker was trying to erase his Jewish connections to satisfy the Democratic Party's increasingly assertive left, which is often at odds with Israel. So he says this in his 2016 book, United. Booker makes no mention of their friendship or his connection to Judaism. It's like he's almost embarrassed. So this guy has repeatedly and publicly criticized Booker with brutal intensity, it says, writing recently in the Jerusalem Post, I will always love Cory as the man who became my closest friend, but I cannot overlook his stunning unfaithfulness to the Jewish people. Now let's see what Booker said about the matter. He said the falling out was not over Iran. He said, I have lots of friends I disagree with over the Iran deal, and we're still friends. He said he withdrew from Shmuley because Shmuley began using their friendship for self-promotion. So Booker says friendships are based on trust. This was somebody who was using the personal in public in a way that was deeply unfortunate. So Booker was also upset because he said he felt betrayed in October 2013 when Shmuley publicized what was meant to be a private after-midnight visit to Schneerson's grave in Queens. Booker's father had died days earlier, just before his son was elected to the Senate. Booker and a small group, including Shmuley, went to Schneerson's grave on election eve to pay respects and pray for his father. So what's significant about this? Well, followers of Schneerson believe that he is the long-awaited Messiah. They call him the Rebbe King Messiah. Listen to this from Harvard Divinity Bulletin. No previous Jewish leader had such astounding global ambitions. As the Rebbe's program of Jewish outreach picked up steam in the early 1990s, his followers became ever more convinced that he must be the long-awaited Messiah. The Rebbe had no children, and his health was deteriorating rapidly. In 1992, at the age of 90, he suffered a severe stroke which led to his loss of speech and his ability to walk. In his weakened condition, he would appear for the evening prayer service on a specially built balcony in the back of his synagogue. On cue, the moment the curtains parted and the Rebbe came into view, the Hasidim would begin chanting fervently, "Long live the Rebbe King Messiah." And he's not the only one. Trump also visited the grave. Listen, the visit to the Ohel, as the grave of Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson is known, served as a gesture to a Jewish constituency that is expected to support Trump in the election. Standing alongside the grave next to the Chabad representatives, Trump engaged in a series of traditional Jewish mourning practices. It says politicians across parties from the United States and Israel have visited Schneerson's resting place in the old Montefiore Cemetery, including Trump's daughter Ivanka and her husband Jared Kushner, who advised Trump when he was in office. Now let's go back to Booker and Shmuley, because this guy has been blasting Booker every chance he gets. He posted this article entitled, "As Rockets Fell on Israel, a Cowardly Cory Booker Ran for His Life." Now listen what it says here in this article. Arguably, the highest ranking American official in all of Israel was our own junior senator, Cory Booker. Are you seeing this, family? How hard do you think he would push for reparations? Let me show you something else he's passionate about. This article from MSN says Cory Booker delivers animated speech for pro-LGBT Equality Act, claiming Trump is targeting transgender people. Listen to what he says. "I want you to know we reintroduced this bill with attitude. We reintroduced this bill with swagger. We entered Tuesday's bill with confidence because there are a lot of people who are hearing our voice right now that don't understand that they are implicated. There's no bystanders in history. When injustice is in our midst and you say nothing and you do nothing, you are part of the perpetuation of that injustice," he said. So the Equality Act would prohibit discrimination based on sex, sexual orientation, and gender identity. What about color? So Booker was joined by Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, as well as former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, among other lawmakers. And do we really need to talk about this one? You all remember the quote. Senator Tim Scott said America is not a racist country. But this USA Today article says, but data shows racial disparities. So it says when Senator Tim Scott gave a rebuttal following President Joe Biden's first address to Congress, the South Carolina senator defended the country's record on race. This is what he said. "Hear me clearly. America is not a racist country." Now let's see what former Senator Harris had to say. She said, first of all, no, I don't think America is a racist country. But we also do have to speak the truth about the history of racism in our country and its existence today. Isn't that a contradictory statement, you all? The article says statistics and facts compiled in a number of sectors over a number of years show inequality pervades U.S. society. But our people have been conditioned to believe that they have to support those who show time and time again that they are loyal to the powers that be, whether they be Democrat or Republican. Here's the thing though. It should be obvious by now that this system is being controlled by the serpent seed. They are working to protect their own interests. It's an unjust system. Deuteronomy 16:18 through 20 tells us how the Most High appointed judges and officers in all of Israel's gates according to their tribes, and they were supposed to judge with just judgment. They were not supposed to pervert justice, show partiality, or take bribes. Can you say that about this capitalistic system? No. The only system that works is the one put in place by the Most High. This beast system is based on greed and exploitation. Just think about this. The top 1% of Americans have enough money to buy 99% of all U.S. homes. Let that sink in. Do you remember the movie The Hunger Games? What were they fighting against? The capital, the oppressive power forcing them to fight against each other. They had no choice but to fight others who were dealing with the same type of oppression. Who benefited and lived in luxury, though? The elite, a small minority of people. So when you listen to these talking heads who try to promote their party and persuade you that their party is better, and you agree with them to the point of attacking those of us who say we are not for either party, you are simply telling us that you are addicted to the Kool-Aid and you can't see beyond your next drink. Neither of these systems will work for us. It was not designed to work for us. So we will continue this discussion. But if this message has been a blessing to you, please hit the like, share it, and subscribe. We normally upload messages on Sunday mornings at 8:30 a.m. Yah willing. Join me next time.